shades, it helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speeding the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy, and it is Friday. And quick apology for the late start. We are still wrestling with open source technology, which sometimes doesn't act the way we think it's going to. But hopefully we've got all our bugs worked out for this morning. Welcome. We are, at least in my neck of the woods, in a nice, beautiful, sunny, although cold, it is nice to see the yellow ball in the sky for the first time in about a week and a half. So I run it outside, open my eyes and get as many vitamins as I can from the sun before it goes away. We have a very interesting show, and we are going to talk primarily about the events in the United States, specifically Washington, D.C., over the last couple of days, which should make everybody a little bit leery and get their eyebrows moving like this. And on the other hand, in different parts of the world, like where I am, that gesture is accompanied by a specific eye roll. But regardless of that, we're going to talk about why this is happening and what the end game is. Are we talking about an attempted coup, a legitimate attempted coup, or are we talking about political theater? And that's a conversation that especially people on the left need to have, but more generally, Americans as a group need to have, because these are potentially distractions from the real issues that Americans are fighting right now. And so that's a big deal. I would now like to introduce my lovely and talented co-host, Miss Carrie Barber. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Andy. Hey, so we were joking yesterday about, so what do you want to talk about today? There's nothing going on, and in fact, there is. So today, I am going to make the case, and you can tell me where I'm wrong, but I'm absolutely going to try to make the case that legally, what we saw go down this week was a coup, and that it also was political theater. So I am going to make the case this morning about how American people, average Americans, were used as pawns in political theater, and actually it turned into a coup legally based on the actions of just a few who are in positions of power. So I want to go through a lot of this, and for those of you who are just tuning in, you're brand new to this show, I will tell you we are live. We do take your comments, particularly if you're watching on our Facebook page, Periscope, Twitter, and Twitch. So in those streams, we can get your comments and we will respond to them. Please don't flame; you'll get banned. We want to have an actual conversation. The other thing that we do here that most don't do is we cite our sources, and they are sources independent of us. So unlike Bill Barr, I will not be citing myself as a source. I go to outside sources and I make sure that they're credible and accurate. And I provide those here so that you can follow along with why I'm making these statements and tell me where I'm wrong. You can point out where you think that this is, and I'm going to warn you, if this is your first time, and you come up with I feel or my feelings or I just believe, that's complete and utter bullshit. We don't do that here. Facts matter, and you better bring your A game. Okay, so just now that we get the ground rules set, let's go ahead and get into it. But first, good morning to Don and Mike. Mike is saying Ted Cruz has released a statement on the attack in the Capitol building. And he posted yeah, okay. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So that's on our Facebook page.
And again, I'm going to reiterate, we're not taking him back.
Right. And Mike says he's having trouble, he's having issues transcribing it on our Facebook page because the Zodiac Killer font is not an option. Boy, don't we wish it was. Oh, and Brandon jumped in this morning. Good morning, Brandon. Welcome to Fridays. So, okay, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about. So,
and before you do, I just wanted to bring up, I loved the meme that I saw on Twitter yesterday. It was my favorite one. It was two-tiered. The top picture was scenes from 2020, and the caption was, 2020 was one hell of a strange year. And the bottom picture was the gentleman in face paint with the horns and the fur standing in the Senate. And the caption was 6 days into 2021.
Oh, absolutely. Hold my beer. And honestly, this is how I feel about it. And I didn't want to be the cynic as we were rounding the horn on 2020 and everyone kept saying we're almost done. And I'm like, no, it's only getting worse from here.
Rounding
Absolutely.
the horn. I like what you did with that. That was good.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So first, off the top, everyone's been talking about this. And if you are in denial that this happened, then you actually have a mental psychosis and we can't help you. But Andy, this is the first graphic, the one about the indigenous people. So we had the United Nations of Tribes and water protectors. These were people from all walks of life who were trying to defend clean water against the tar sands coming out of Canada and coming across our farmland, in particular, sovereign nation tribes, their land. So they were exercising their rights. Is it the Sixth Amendment? I forget off the top of my head, but they have a right to these land. It's sovereign nation. We're starting to see courts actually acknowledge that previous decisions under the Obama administration were flatly wrong. And these people have a right to their own autonomy and their resources, which, by the way, are clean water. Water that feeds not just tribal lands, but Americans and farmlands. It went from Minnesota to Illinois, ended in Illinois. And all of this was because a few oil barons didn't want to transport their oil around by cargo ship. They wanted to go right through the nation's farmland and affect our farmers through, they were taking their farmland through eminent domain and all of these other sorts of things. So the water protectors were there to say, hey, no, this pipeline, their company, everything they do is wrong and it will leak. And now, hindsight 2020, we saw that it did leak. And it's
right.
leaked
And
multiple times.
Let's remind people that this was a little while ago. So some of the details might be a little fuzzy, but just remember that pipeline was originally supposed to go through a very white neighborhood. And it was diverted from that. They went around that neighborhood so that they could go through indigenous lands.
That's exactly right. And we see that all the time. All the time when we build a highway, we put it through a poor neighborhood or we put it through a predominantly minority neighborhood, that type of thing. Same thing happened here. So here are people trying to defend clean water and their homes, right? Their homes. Your home is your castle, all of this sort of thing. All of these things that we were grown up, we were taught as we were growing up. Here's what we did to them. And this was under the Obama administration. And then as Black Lives Matter went through, and I want to talk in detail about a lot of myths and just outright falsehoods that have been said. And I keep seeing these, particularly from our neighbors on the right. They're saying that people in the Black Lives Matter protests all across the country weren't being prosecuted. That is a flat out lie. And I've already posted links to that. In Seattle, in Louisville, in Wisconsin, in all of these places, including Chicago, where you had Black Lives Matter protests who were protesting that our Constitution was not being followed, due process and equal protection. These two are so important that they are listed twice in the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the attachment to the Constitution. That is what they were protesting. So if you're talking about your freedoms and upholding the Constitution, there is no argument you can make that says not all of us should have due process and equal protection. That is why they were out there. So I have seen multiple times congressmen say that nobody was prosecuted, nobody was arrested for all of these things. Seattle alone had over 500 arrests. Minneapolis had 627. So I went out and started pulling all the information from these arrests. Here's what you need to know, particularly in Seattle, where they just swept people up off the street, unmarked vans, all of these things. Most of those people, when a judge and cooler heads prevailed and a judge looked at the evidence against them and found none, the charges were dropped. So there were a number of people, and particularly that wall of moms, the moms and the grandmas, they had been arrested. Charges against them were dropped because there was no evidence that they had vandalized, set fire, done any of that. So they dropped those charges. The rest have been prosecuted. They have been prosecuted. And I included some other links where our own FBI, Homeland Security, and all of the three-letter agencies who had gone in and investigated, arrested, charged white supremacists. Those were the people who were setting the fires. And if you don't believe me, the links are right there. They're all right there. And I need to remind our brothers and sisters on the right here, these are Republican-led agencies. They are not lying to us when they have, hey, we have evidence. This guy was trying to bomb a federal building and make it look like these protesters had done it. Here, once again, we are all being used by people in power trying to manipulate the narrative to keep us divided. They keep telling you that there were no arrests during Black Lives Matter, and that is a flat out lie. Here's the information, and I'm starting you on the path to find it for yourself. Dear God, Google is free. Fucking use it.
Yes, absolutely. And for a little perspective here, let's also remember, and I saw it firsthand because I was on the other platform that I volunteer for. We were live streaming the events in Portland. And there were protesters lined up along a fence at the federal building that were being fired on by rubber bullets and tear gassed because they were shaking the fence. And there were Trump supporters in the stream that were arrest those violent people, those violent protesters. 2 days ago, we saw an armed group of people break into the federal building. And almost every single one of them walked away after taking selfies with the Capitol Police. Okay, let's keep that in mind as we proceed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you and I and most people try to argue from a logical framework, but we can see now very clearly that there are some elements on the right, particularly the fascists, the outright fascists, who are not arguing in good faith. And every argument they use is just meant to deflect from their actions. They really don't believe what they're saying. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in law and order. They don't believe in the value of life. They actually don't believe in what our country stands for and don't give a shit about us and our neighbors. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, particularly when they keep trying to move the goalpost, or like, Andy, very good example. Shaking a fence is not violence. You're not hurting anything. You're shaking a fence. Setting fire to something, now that's different. You are now breaking the law. And as we saw over and over again throughout the summer and the fall, people were being arrested and prosecuting for those crimes. It's there. Meanwhile, you had the fascists in Congress saying that it wasn't happening. And that was an outright lie. So one of two things happened. Either you believed these people who were lying to you and never bothered to check on it, never bothered to question if what they were saying was true, or you didn't fucking care, right? So that's on you. And now you have become my problem. You've become the problem of everyone else around you, because now what do we do with you? Right? So if you're a parent and you got one kid who was wilding out completely, what do you do? And that's what we're going to talk about. And here's where I'm going to make the case that this was, in fact, a coup, whether the people who were there in protest were aware of it or not. So, is Hershey okay? Hershey wants to get in on the broadcast.
Oh, well, the last time she came in, she knocked my green screen over. So, you know, it's hard to reason with a dog. I don't speak dog.
There's no negotiating with terrorists. Give him a cookie. So,
I wish I had.
So, Andy, this is the next graphic, the one of Trump that I haven't linked to this, and I posted it. I'll post it again for the slow learners in the class here, but here's the difference between a violent protest where a mob storms the Capitol and a coup. A coup has to have certain elements of legal apparatus. These have to be certain officials in charge who are making a conscious decision to either not uphold their oath and their responsibilities, to openly ignore it, or to lie about it. And while I was watching all of this unfold, I was looking for, is this just a violent mob, or are those elements in place? And I saw it. I saw it real time. And the first time I saw it was when Mike Pompeo denied use of the National Guard. That was the first check. And later in the day, after all the damage had been done, then the Secretary of Defense allowed the National Guard to come in. So those two pieces, in my mind, I was like, this is actually a legal coup now. Now we can start to have a very different conversation about what is happening. And this is what I want to get to. So I'm going to try and share this video. This is the first time we've done it this way. So bear with me on this. I'm going to try and share this video. But this is Maryland's governor, Larry Hogan. And he is talking about trying to send the National Guard to District of Columbia. Okay, so here's how it works. The mayor of a city has to give permission for the National Guard to come in, either by request or grant permission. And the DC mayor, Bauer, had asked for them to come. And when she went to Maryland first, because Maryland's right across the river there, they're right there. Their entire National Guard is stationed right there, 10 minutes from the Capitol. She went to them first, and it was denied. And it was Mike Pompeo who denied it. So then what she had to do later was go to the governor of Virginia, and their guard was a little bit further away, and they actually responded first. So when you had Portland going down and you had Seattle going down and you had all of those mayors saying, oh, we didn't invite the National Guard in, they were fucking lying to you. And I want you to know this, they were lying. It has to be at the permission of the mayor of that city, right? So that's Chicago, Kenosha, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland. All of those mayors had to grant permission. So what we saw was the mayor asking for it and being denied. So this is the statement by, oh goodness, I'm gonna try and get it up here. by Maryland's governor. So 1 second, I'll go ahead and play this for you.
General Gowan was repeatedly being told by the National Guard at the national level that we did not have authorization. I was actually on the phone with Leader Hoyer, who was
We have
pleading with
audio,
us
but no
with the Guard.
video.
He was yelling across the room to Schumer, and they were back and forth saying, we do have the authorization. And I'm saying, I'm telling you, we do not have the authorization. And so we had multiple times, the general was, we running up the flagpole, we're ready, don't have authorization, don't have authorization. And then I get a call an hour and a half later out of the blue, not from the Secretary of Defense, not through what would be normal channels.
We have audio, but we don't have video, Gary.
No. All right, well, I went ahead and posted the link so that you could watch it. That didn't work so well, but yeah, it's been a crazy week, so bear with us on that one. But so you have the governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, flatly denying what was said later in the day when they said, oh, we had every opportunity and we were fully cooperating. That was complete and utter bullshit. So that is the Secretary of Defense who is already being caught in a lie. Absolutely being caught in a lie. So imagine the scenario where you have Steny Hoyer, who's the number 2 in the majority in the House, on the phone begging for help. You have Chuck Schumer begging for help on the phone, and then you're being told to stand down. You don't have the authority. I cannot imagine. Well, no, it is unbelievable that happened. And in my mind, what I saw, despite everything, despite the threat to life, despite the number of lives that were lost, the people who were injured, we still saw those fucking fascists in Congress step up after the dust had settled and lie again and say that none of this stuff happened, that all of the allegations that were being made were somehow true when they were not. And we have said it on this network, and I am constantly screaming at the television because the Democratic leadership has not pushed back on these lies enough. And all of those people in the crowd went there believing that there was some kind of evidence, something was taken for them. The whole stop the steal, that they were losing their rights and their voice as Americans, and none of that was true. And how do we know? Under the First Amendment, every time someone goes to court, those transcripts must be publicly available. That means you, as a citizen, can go and request the transcripts. You had 44 initial court cases, all 44 of them. No evidence was presented whatsoever by the complaining party. That is the Trump campaign. Zero evidence was provided. That's why they were all thrown out of court. Further, the Republicans and Democrats on both sides, county parties, state parties, your local neighbor, you don't understand how your own elections work, and shame on you. Every one of those elections was handled by a county clerk. In every one of those counties where they said that there was an issue, it was a Republican county clerk. Every time you went to a polling place, whether you mailed in your ballot or you physically went there, every one of those poll workers was a bipartisan volunteer. Bipartisan, for those of you who don't know, means a Republican and a Democrat. It means both sides had to be there. That is your election. And it's through your own ignorance and your own laziness and your apathy that this happened. This is why you were able to be duped by a con man, a ridiculous con man, and put yourself in harm's way. And now we have to deal with you and bring you back. And I don't know how else to do it because you won't listen to reason, you won't listen to facts, and you are so out of your minds with bloodlust that you are wanting this to happen. But then on the flip side, during the crowd, we saw people crying and incredulous. How would they do this to us? I've been tear gassed. What did you expect was going to happen? You saw what was happening to people who were peaceful, just asking for their constitutional rights. What did you think? Oh, well, we know what you thought. Throughout this entire time, we've seen the police force, we've seen all of those in authority stand back and let you do whatever the hell you want. We saw you go armed to the Michigan Capitol. We saw you go armed to all of these other state capitals, and nothing happened. So, of course, you would think that. Over and over again, the system has failed our neighbors on the right, leading them to believe that they are above the law, that what they do is totally okay, and all the lies that they have been told are actually true. And they themselves are so ignorant and don't know how to find the resources and think for themselves that they use the defense system of calling everyone else sheeple and snowflakes when they themselves are so fucking terrified of everything that they lash out in anger. And this is a situation we find ourselves in now after everything's settled, and we still expect Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to stand up and make this right. When in all this time, when we have been telling them, hey, there's a problem, they didn't do anything. So now what do we do? And this is where I am left with just, it's incredulous to me because, Andy, you and I have talked about it. Every time that there's a revolution, it's always us. It's us that dies. It's our blood in the street. It's never someone of consequence who started the whole thing. And this is where my frustration comes from, right? So,
yeah, and I think a lot of the issues that have occurred is because people on the right are being told a certain thing because American political environment is very tribalized, and people just live within their own bubble, and they only listen to the things that they want to hear that will make their own viewpoint seem more strengthened by that, right? And I don't have to list the entities that on the right that are responsible for doing that, right? But something that I've seen that is very telling, right, is that you have people on the right that identify as conservatives, right? They're no different than anybody else in the society. They just identify politically with one side over the other, right? And they say things like fake news. And they've been told certain things by people that identify as left-leaning politically. Mm-hmm. And it's a complete farce to me, because if you understand where either side is, the right will say that mainstream media is fake news. Well, the left says that too. You know, we have that in common, right? We agree that the progressive side of politics agrees it is fake news. It's meant to, keep the oligarchs that run society in power, that represent a fraction of the population, right? We're not all Nancy Pelosi fans, like they've been telling you, right? That everybody on the left is happy Joe Biden is president, when in fact, there's very few people that are happy that Joe Biden is president, right? It's the lesser of two evils that they don't tell you about, right? The political system is broken. We all know that in some way. We're just not sure, for the most part, how to go about fixing it. But our point in the left is your solution is not to elect a snake oil salesman that's a racist and trying to divide the country for his own personal gain.
Right. That's exactly right. And this is what we keep seeing over and over again. So now we're here in the conversation, in the space of what do we do about it? And so we're looking at, people have said we're going to do articles of impeachment. So fucking what? So what? Right? You're not going to get enough Republicans to vote on it, because one of the things I was looking for as I was watching C-SPAN was after the Senate came back to finish the count, after the House came back to finish the count, and I said it on air that same day on multiple programs, what I'm looking for are those remaining state objections. Who is going to say, hey, look, this has gone too far? Because earlier that day, they were telling their colleagues, yeah, we know this is bullshit. We know that this is performative. Don't worry about it. And then they stood up and lied, and then all hell broke loose. So what I was looking for is who was going to come back and continue the lie after they themselves had almost been hurt, after people died. Who was going to have the just complete moral ineptitude, turpitude, to actually stand up and lie? And we saw it. We saw them do it over and over again. In fact, on the House floor, there was almost a fist fight because someone was like, what are you doing? You lied. And the other guy took offense to it. No, you fucking lied. You lied to those people. You lied and told them that there was evidence of voter fraud, that everything had been stolen from them. You lied. And the fact that you are now uncomfortable at being called a liar and being called out on your lie, meanwhile, people are dying. This is what we're dealing with. We have elected people. And I said this about Howley from the beginning. When Howley was working with Sanders about, maybe getting people some more money, and everyone's like, oh, yay, Josh Howley from Missouri. I was like, hey, wait a second. He's not the hero you're looking for, because what I was watching was him going out and spreading that lie too, right? So the distinction that we need to make here is every time we have a presidential election and every time we have the ceremonial counting of the electoral votes, every time we have objections. And they're usually bullshit objections, whatever, it doesn't matter, but it's purely ceremonial. What we have never had is a coordinated lie on a nationwide tour. And that goes to Rudy Giuliani. And I have said this over and over again. If you didn't catch it, that fucker, here's what he did. Not only did he expose the entire Republican legislature in Arizona to COVID and all of their staff who don't have the same insurance coverage as the representatives, but he refused to take an oath before he talked about the alleged fraud and the steal that was happening. He refused to take an oath. When an attorney refuses to take an oath and then presents you this song and dance, you know it's a fucking lie. And that's what he did. And he did it publicly right out front in Arizona, and then continued it in Pennsylvania and Georgia. That wasn't your first clue? And where is Giuliani right now? We're seeing the pictures of him with all of the alt-right and the white supremacists, the same guy with the horn hat. All of these photos are coming out. And here's the kicker. And I keep going back to this. And I had this discussion with a Trump supporter very early on. Trump was inaugurated in January. In February, they actually had, this was Neil Gorsuch, invited Nazis from Austria to the White House, and I lost my shit. There were 4 members who were invited to the White House 1 month after by Neil Gorsuch, who is himself a Nazi member, and nobody blinked. Nobody blinked, not on the left, not on the right. Nobody gave a shit. So when we get here to this point where logic and reason and rule of law and our own constitution, and oh, by the way, police officers are all being trampled, and we wonder why. And my problem now with having to rely on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to fix this is they have allowed it to happen. They've allowed it to get this far. And I've seen them talk about, well, let's impeach him, or let's remove people, or even the word sedition is being tossed around. And once again, that one word, sedition, it's being used in two different ways to manipulate, right? So on the left, I'm seeing people go, wait, no, not sedition, because that was used against us, and someday it might be used against us again. Fuck you. That is not how it works. We don't prosecute a criminal because someday it might happen to us. Law and order and justice. So I went out and talked to a couple district attorneys, former district attorneys, some prosecutors, and here is what they said. The Sedition Act itself was repealed in 1921, and ironically, it was repealed and that exonerated and let Eugene V. Debs out of jail. I happen to live in the county where he was held, so I know all about Eugene Debs. If you're a Bernie supporter, Eugene Debs is where Bernie got his inspiration. If you don't know about Eugene Debs and his fight for workers' rights during the Pullman strikes, go read it. It's rich history, and it's your history. So the Sedition Act itself, which had been used against, progressives, populists, people fighting for workers' rights, that's where the Sedition Act came from. So that was repealed. However, we still have pieces and words, the sedition word, in other pieces of legislation. Now, everyone that I spoke to at the federal level and at the state prosecution level said, you will not see a sedition charge. It's not going to happen. What they will do is the same thing they did in Seattle and Portland and all of these other places. They will hit them with vandalism, trespassing, and all the other applicable crimes that are knowable and easily proved through evidence at hand. That's what you'll see. So when it comes to those in the Senate and in the House who have openly aided this coup, and it is a coup, what happens to them? Well, they're being admonished. They might be censured. You might have an ethics violation. That's pretty much it. There are some people who are calling for him to be removed. And in fact, Josh Hawley's own Republicans in his state are talking about removing him. That's what should happen. He should never be allowed to hold office again. But will that transpire throughout the rest of the House and Senate? Because we're looking at 148 members in Congress that openly participated, cheered, encouraged, lied to the American people in order to force them into this situation for their own personal gain, I might add. So, Andy, my prediction is that not a goddamn thing is going to happen. These people will not be held accountable. You'll get some performative yet again, maybe we'll impeach him again. He's already been impeached. And look at what he's doing. And I'm talking about Trump at this point. So, Andy, am I being a cynic? So far, I haven't been wrong.
No, I think that they're going to end up blaming Antifa again.
Oh, God.
Like they always do. You know, the Antifa, the group.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you know,
yeah.
Antifa is an ideology. It's not an actual group. Just so you know.
Well, and that's just it. It blew my mind because the evidence that they were talking about, and I'm talking about the people who were encouraging or openly participated in this coup, the normal people, the people who have to work every day, who were deluded. Their proof that this was Antifa was some guy on a street corner said he saw a bus with the Antifa logo being escorted in by police. That's not proof. That's not evidence. And first off, you have one of two issues. One, either you're mentally incapable of processing information and critical thinking, or you want to believe it, so you will take that as evidence. Just like a child who wants to believe in Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. That is your way of coping, so that you don't have to admit that what is going on is the uncomfortable truth. It is easier to believe that lie. And that's what we saw. And oh my God, Alabama, what the fuck? You've got Mo Brooks out there saying the same thing. And he actually called them Antifa fascists. No, Antifa is
it's like
anti-fascist.
missiles.
Right, exactly.
It's like military intelligence.
Oh God. Yeah, these are the people that you are sending to Congress. They are screwing you as well as the rest of us. Right? Mo Brooks couldn't find his way out of a paper bag. This guy's a fucking moron. And you put him in charge of your livelihood? What were you thinking? Right? So every time now that I see a Mo Brooks tweet and I got him on alert, I'm reporting all that shit. Fake news. He's lying. He's lying to the people. He's lying to everyone else. This is completely false. It was not Antifa. It was not. And how do we know this? Because we've seen these same agitators again and again and again. And oh, we have photo evidence. And oh, by the way, that guy had Nazi tattoos all over him. That's not Antifa. Okay, so, and I'd like to remind everybody, and I had this conversation quite a bit. We were all anti-fascists once. My grandfather went over to the Pacific to fight fascists there, and half of his platoon didn't come home because they were willing to give their lives to fight fascists. My grandmother was in Europe as a field nurse, patching people together on the battlefront, fighting fascists. And now you have chosen to openly embrace fascism, bring it here, and take us down from the inside. In what way, shape, or form is that patriotic? We were all anti-fascist once. We were all Antifa once, and only patriots still are. The rest of you, no, you have gone over to the other side. And there's no kind way to say that. This is a choice that you have decided to make. So okay. So Don brings up this fact, they live streamed it. Yeah, you idiots, you live streamed your own complicity and your participation in a coup, right? So this is where you're at. And I think the most telling image for me, the one that got me the most, wasn't the death and destruction. It was, for the first time in this nation's history ever, the traitor's flag crossed the threshold of the U.S. Capitol. You had the Southern Heritage Traitors flag marched and paraded around the gallery in the U.S. Capitol. And this is how fucking stupid you are, that you would think that that is okay and that you are somehow a patriot. No, that is exactly the opposite. So in my mind, I'm like, not only do we have a problem with people being able to lie with impunity, like Andy, you and I can't do that here. We can't. We could try and everybody would call us out and they would be right to do so. This is why we post our links ahead of time, so everyone else can participate in the constructive, or even, I don't give a shit, an argument, and be able to point to the facts. How is it that a member of Congress can stand up there and lie every day and get away with it? How is that okay? And look what it got us. So, hey, good morning, Dion and Shane, Dave. I'm sorry, I'm out of sorts. So I'm still parsing through all this information, but I don't know, Andy. You and I talked about it. I think. Well, you said it here. We agree on more than we disagree on as neighbors.
Sure.
So what do we do now, because we know we cannot rely on members of Congress, we can't rely on Pelosi or the squad or anyone else. It's always down to just us. So where do we go from here?
Well, this is all theater, right? This is all meant to distract the people from what's really happening, right? In the fact that in the next week or so, the US is going to get another spike in COVID because of the Christmas holidays and people not, doing what they should have done to help stop the spread of the disease. As the hospital ICU wards fill up with people, and it's just another way to say, no, look over here. Nothing to see here. And people have to start realizing what's actually going to change things for the better in society and stop being distracted by this theater while millions and millions of Americans get thrown out in the street because at the end of January, the current moratorium on rents and mortgage payments ends, right? And people start being evicted from their homes because they haven't had an income in over a year or what have you, depending on your situation. Or they go into medical debt because they got COVID and needed to go to the hospital and they can't pay their bills, right? That's the winter that's coming, right? This bullshit that's happening right now with your government is meant to distract you from that, right? The Democrats said that we're going to do this and this and this and this. And they've pretty much backed away from every single promise that they made when they were explaining why they were different than Trump. Okay. So now you've got a situation where all of these things that could have helped people, like Biden's response to the pandemic and all of the things that they talked about doing, you've now been distracted from that, right? That buys them more time to not do anything, right?
Right.
That's the real issue here. And that's what people have to get their heads out of their ass and understand, that your fellow citizens are going to be dying this winter because they have no place to live and they don't have any money to buy food, right? We have to understand that, not be distracted by this political theater that's happening.
And that's exactly, Andy, you're always right. But on this point, you are just phenomenally right, because the distraction, if you were on the right or independent right or whatever those people want to call themselves, was your boogeyman went from a brown person immigrant to Antifa. That became the new boogeyman to distract people with. And so they were talking about how Antifa is ruining the country, not the fact that, oh, by the way, you should have an extra $20,000 to $30,000 in your pocket through the public purse so that you don't die, so that your business doesn't close. They also used the whole coronavirus as a hoax. And while people were dying, how many times did we see that? It started with a police officer in Boston who swore it was a hoax, and then he lost his father and his brother, and you saw him crying saying it's not a hoax, right? So the people who suffer are us, always us. And I don't care whether you're on the left, right, wherever, we are being used completely. And on the left, If you come at me one more time and say that PAYGO was a win, I'm going to throat punch you because you are stupid. You are being so stupid and you're selling the rest of us out for crumbs, for a lie on the left. It was never true. It was never necessary. It was put in place by the leaders of the left to keep you down, to keep all of us hungry and paycheck to paycheck and all of these things as an excuse for how do we pay for it. So once again, and I try to do this as often as I can, if you think you understand macroeconomics and how federal spending works, or if you are honest with yourself and understand that you don't, I am going to invite you to just listen to this wonderful podcast that Andy is a part of. It's called Macro and Cheese. Macro and Cheese. And I'll post the link. I've always posted the link. Just put it on and do whatever you're doing. You can ride to work. You can do chores, laundry, whatever the hell it is you do with your day. Put it on and just listen. Because none of these people are being paid to lie to you. Most of these people are retired. Most of them are whistleblowers who've had their careers ruined because they said, hey, this isn't right, or we need to stop this theft. All of these people who are being interviewed and explaining how money actually works on a federal level, everything will change. So every time you hear a PAYGO, you'll know it's a lie. Every time you hear somebody on the right talking about, well, we can't, how do we afford it? How do we do this? The deficit, you'll know that's a lie. And we can start to make progress. Otherwise, it's going to be more of us with our blood in the streets. Absolutely. So Andy, Macro and Cheese, anything you want to say about that one?
Oh, it's absolutely perfectly set up. We need, it's there to instruct and teach people. And I know it's tough because a lot of people, they hear the word economics and they shut off, right? It's one of those subjects that has the ability to do that, unfortunately, but it's so important to understanding how we go from the society we have now to a just society where people are taken care of, where the rugged individualism ideals of yesterday are bullshit and they don't need to happen. And we talk about all boats rising at once together. Well, there's a shit ton of people in society that don't have access to a boat, right? If we understand how federal financing works, if you take the time to even just understand a little bit of the concept, you understand that money is no longer an issue, that the PAYGO question is bullshit, and the things that the left is demanding and should be demanding en masse in society, like Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, all of that stuff is entirely possible and could start happening tomorrow. And things like poverty and homelessness and unemployment are political choices that our politicians make to keep the oligarchs in society happy. And that's very powerful, but it takes people to want to be able to absorb these ideas. We've been lied to our entire lives about this, that deficits matter, that the government has no money, that we're broke, we can't afford it. And it's total bullshit. The Fed was authorized by Congress to provide $1 trillion a day for 30 days to the stock market to keep it liquid during the worst of the lockdown at the beginning of 2020. That's larger than the national debt that the US has run up for its entire life. Where did the questions about who's going to pay for it come from? There weren't any, because it's not a question. And the more people that start to understand this, the quicker we can start actually making the lives of people better, right? We can start providing the things that people need, not just to survive, but to thrive, to actually start enjoying their lives without wondering where their next paycheck is, or where their next meal is coming from, or that I have to work 3 jobs just to feed my family. Those are all political choices, and they don't have to be that way. And that's what understanding federal financing can do for society and the world.
Preach it. Preach it. And I cannot stress this enough. Everything that is happening to you, whether you own a business or you're about to be laid off, or you're worried that you're going to be laid off, you're worried about losing your health insurance, dear God, don't get a cancer diagnosis, because it'll ruin you. Everything that you worked for might be at risk. You're retired and you're at risk of losing your retirement and your house and your home. All of these are a consequence of political choices that are being made and have been made over the last 50, 60 years, so that there is a constant transfer of wealth from you upward. And nowhere did we see this in such stark detail but under this pandemic, when we had just a few profiting off of our death and misery yet again. I need you to get it right. We all need you to get it right, and to stop listening to the same people who would see you dead so that they can make an extra dollar. Please, Google's a thing. It's free. Macro and Cheese is out there. Independent media like ours. We are not corporate funded. We will never be corporate funded. We will always bring you the truth and show you the detail of where we got this from. Always. You won't see it on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, alt-right media. None of them will do it. None of them. We're doing it on the independent media. And I got to tell you, progressivism is not on the left. It's not socialism. It's center policy. Fiscally responsible, socially sound, so that you don't die. So that's all I got for today. I will say that I'm really excited about a couple things that are coming up. We have a special guest coming Monday. I'm not going to reveal who it is, but this will take us back to